Good morning, everyone. Wonderful to see all of you on the second day of PAFI's 11th Annual Forum 2024. Bright and early here after a long, long day yesterday. Thank you so much for joining us. A quick reminder of the rules. We have 3 sessions today, one after the other. There will be a coffee break in the middle, but in between, please remember to keep your phones on silent. Do post on social media, but make sure that your phones do not disturb other people. And as far as the latest program is concerned, your badges have a QR code. That's the best way to find the program. We have a great panel here, but before I hand things over to Nitendra, our moderator, a couple of quick notes. In February, when we started thinking about this year's annual forum, we did something new. We reached out to our members over WhatsApp and Google poll and asked them what they wanted to see more of in this year's annual forum. And one of the top sessions that people asked for was one on new technologies on AI. And that was the beginning point of thinking about putting together a panel on this. At PAFI, we have a number of sector-focused councils, which also includes an AI council. Our PAFI members who are here in the crowd today, you will be receiving notifications, emails about those shortly. But the way I would like to think of it is this panel is perhaps one of the first conversations that we are beginning to have on AI, which we will continue in deliberations, discussions in the AI Council as well. It is a great pleasure to welcome this August panel. Nitendra Rajput is Senior Vice President AI Garage at MasterCard. He has put together an exciting session. I will hand over to him. But before I do that, it is my very great pleasure to welcome the other speakers. Shri Abhishek Singh, Additional Secretary at the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, works with responsibilities on artificial intelligence and emerging technologies, as well as cybersecurity and digital skilling. He is not new to PAFI and the annual forum. He was here last year in his earlier role as the CEO of NEGD, DIC and MyGov at MeitY. It is also our very great pleasure to welcome Shri Rohit Kumar Singh, who is also not new to MeitY at all, and members of, who's not new to PAFI, I'm sorry, and members of PAFI. He has been here in Annual Forum and numerous other sessions with us. He's currently a member in the National Consumer Disputes Redressal Commission, but before that, he has had a long and illustrious career as an IAS officer. And he superannuated earlier this year as the Secretary to the Government of India in the Department of Consumer Affairs, in which capacity he has been with us at PAFI multiple times. Also welcome Harvey Zhang, who is Vice President, Deputy General Counsel, and Chief Privacy Officer responsible for Cisco's global privacy strategy, vision, and mission, focusing on compliance, market access, and differentiation. We also have Venkatesh Krishnan joining us. He is Executive Director at Microsoft India and South Asia. And last but not least, we have Vedika Kapoor, who serves as Director, Government Affairs and Communications at Helion, and is a very active PAFI member. Thank you all of you for joining us this morning. And Nitendra, over to you.
Thank you, Deep, for the introduction, and welcome everyone, and thanks to the esteemed panelists and to all the guests here who, despite the heavy traffic in Delhi, you've all made it in time, so great to know that. This panel is, as Deep was saying, on about the new technologies on the block and how can technology help India to lead India's growth. And to start with the panel, I would want all the panelists to actually think about and all of us to remember how India was 40 years from now. So we are 2024. If you remember how India was 40 years earlier, let's say in 1984, do we remember how much time it took us to actually get a gas connection? Years. How much time it take to get a phone connection? Again, we are talking years. You know that Vespa scooter that we want to buy? If you would want to buy that, you would pay some booking amount and then you would need to wait for months. And there would be a lot of black marketing and so on that used to happen at those points in times. And see where we have come today. The nation has completely transformed itself, and actually, perhaps technology is the driver and has been the driver in these last 40 years as well. With the passion, with the hunger, with the number of skilled people that we have in this country, we can imagine where this country can be 40 years from now And it is hopefully going to be a significant leap. If we see where we were 40 years earlier, then we can not even imagine what this country can be if we use the technology in the right manner 40 years ahead in time. And that's what I would want all of you, and especially all the panelists here, to start with. And Abhishek sir, maybe I can start with you. Paint a picture for us, please, that 40 years from now, 2064, we are sitting. How does India look to you, sir?
Well, it's good to imagine what 2064 will be. I would not like to go back what 1984 was for a variety of reasons. So when you look at the changes that happens in technology, I would say 40 years is a very, very long time. Technological changes have been disruptive in the last several years, several decades that we have seen. And the way we will be, what I foresee, especially the role the technology will play, especially with the advent of compute, with the advent of AI, with the advent of this, the world will become increasingly connected. We will be able to communicate better, not within India, with the fellow citizens across, without the barriers of language, without the barriers of a script, maybe spoken language, and maybe globally. So it will become a more closer, connected world wherein to communicate with anyone, you would be able to do that seamlessly without the need of even a device. Maybe you will have a wearables or maybe even a chip somewhere implanted in your body which will allow you access to complete information and ability to talk, communicate, share information, share knowledge, and be able to do things in as if you were living in close proximity of a family or something. So that kind of change will be. Then the whole hardship with regard to how to access services and all will just not be there because access to services will be seamless. Having said that, I would also like to mention is that it will also require the global community to come out with frameworks for ensuring that such technologies, such breakthrough interventions that are being made every day also result in some responsible use of that technology. How do we distinguish between the right and the wrong? How do we distinguish between who decides what the technology does? How do we ensure that we are able to protect democracies as we know them, or we allow some tech giants or some technology companies to dominate the way people think, the way people behave? So those will be challenges which will require maybe some detox from technology and ensuring that a fair balance is done. So while the prospects are very exciting, but at the same time, we also need to think of ways and means in which we can come together to prevent any misuse that may also happen.
Thank you so much, sir. That's really exciting to see that picture. Sir Rohit, what is your view of the world 40 years from now, especially for India, I must say?
I was just checking my notes, and I think it is out of syllabus, so let me... I can't think because I have been watching the developments very closely on the AI front, and I think singularity is very, very close. It's closer than you think, and the ChatGPT launch of O1 or whatever it is called, and I tried it, and I think the next model, which they call Project Strawberry, by 2027 itself, forget 40 years, things are going to be totally different. But I would just supplement Abhishek ji that probably PAFI session will not be happening here. It will all be in our some wearable, and we'll be sitting in a pool or on a beach, and we'll be participating in this session. But I must caution that we think that India is supposed to be a tech giant. We are not, because the huge digital divide that is prevalent even now, as technology grows and grows exponentially, this divide will also grow exponentially, and my fear is the have and have-nots. If that gap widens and widens to the extent that it creates social imbalance, things are not going to be very good. I'm sorry for being devil's advocate, but since Abhishek said all the good things, somebody has to say the bad things also. And mind you, what happened in Lebanon yesterday, those kind of things, their proliferation of the bad kind, that will also become very accessible, very easy to do, and we have to be very careful. It's beyond cybersecurity. If you hack a supply chain, what does cybersecurity do? So we have to be very careful where the world is going. But all the good things, as Abhishek said, will of course happen. But I can't think of 40 years from now.
Thank you, Sir Rohit. This is an honest answer, and I think we should all be vigilant of what technology can do from a negative perspective as well. We also have esteemed panelists from the industry to balance out the view from the government, and thankfully we have Venkatesh here from Microsoft and Harvey from Cisco. Again, a good representation saying that how global tech giants have their presence in India as well. So in that backdrop, Venkatesh, what is your view? Where do you see India 40 years from now, especially from a tech perspective?
Yeah, I'm an eternal optimist, so thank you. I'm an eternal optimist. I think India actually has a great potential and a great future. Just the statistics actually align to that particular thing. To me, success would really be about, in 40 years from now, if we can actually solve some of the problems that we have not been able to solve for centuries, right? Healthcare is one area where I believe there can be exponential gain. And to the point that Sir made about the digital divide, language has always been a biggest challenge for us. But the point that Abhishek Singh mentioned about the fact that we will move away from us needing to know computers to computers having the ability to understand us, and hence our spoken language itself becomes our power. So the spoken language, if that becomes the real way in which we start communicating, we start accessing services, and that is tech capability to understand what that is and present what we need to do. That would be a huge, huge benefit for a country like India, with its cultural diversity, linguistic divide, not just based on language, but on dialects and the complexity that surrounds it. Education, in my mind, is another area where if you are able to democratize education to a place where it is not about people's ability to pay huge amount of tuition fees or money to be paid to coaching classes. And that happens because there are not enough amount of tutors available. So if we can really solve some of that divide that exists between content and knowledge, and how that knowledge can be democratized to reach every Indian, given the fact that we have the largest youth population in the world, I think we have an opportunity of a lifetime. We missed Industrial Revolution because we were actually contributing to some other countries' Industrial Revolution at that point in time, right? We were governed by the British at that point in time. We have a real opportunity to seize the moment as it pertains to AI because of our digital literacy, because of our population now becoming our strength, our language divide now becoming our strength, and our ability to find solutions to problems, whether it is climate change, whether it has got to do with quality healthcare, whether it has got to do with educating every person on the planet. Those are possibilities that are absolutely imaginable in a few years from now. And by the time we get to that 40 year, I think we really, really have an opportunity of leading the world. That's my take.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Venkatesh. And Harvey, the brush is now onto you.
Right.
Within the last 7 or 8 minutes, we've already painted a very good painting of the future of India. So
Yeah.
in the space that is left, what do you paint?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not quite as visionary as the other panelists, and without having consulted them beforehand, I think the theme is consistent of what I thought of this morning when approached with this question, just this hyperconnectivity that we're experiencing now, and this importance of understanding and connecting with each other. And so, of course, language. And so I was thinking of an innovation that some of it is already in the works, right, where you would get real-time translation and understand as you're communicating with other people. In India itself, with 22 different official languages, that's a challenge in and of itself, but going beyond that and looking internationally at the different languages that are spoken. And then going beyond just the languages itself and that basic translation at some level, but as you were talking about medical jargon or other technical fields, like oftentimes my mother doesn't understand the doctor as they're explaining different situations there, even though it's in the same language that she speaks, it's her native language, but that technical jargon is difficult. And so if there's something that allows for better understanding when you're communicating with each other, both individually and in the international arena, I think will be something that's really important that we need to do, and I think there are steps towards that.
That's really amazing. So we see kind of singularity, we see opportunities in the healthcare education space, we see hyperconnectivity, so on. One of the things that Sir Rohit also mentioned was with respect to digital divide, and I would want to pick your brains, Abhishek sir, on this, no, this one is for you. Yeah. So Abhishek sir, I just wanted to pick your brains on the digital divide. So the digitization strategy for India has definitely seen significant leaps and bounds. Now, when it comes to the new tech that's going to come in the future, what do you see? Where does our digital strategy go, and also make sure that this digital divide somehow gets alienated rather than created more, that Rohit sir was also referring?
See, like India's digital transformation story has been well documented, well talked about, and we all have seen how it has transformed lives, enabled access to healthcare, enabled access to financial services, enabled access to agricultural services, education. So in all this strategy, right from the beginning of the conceptualization of digital India, digital inclusion has been like a cornerstone of our strategy. How do we ensure that we don't create digital haves and digital have-nots? So whether it's the setting up of common service centers across the length and breadth of the country, 500,000 of them are there, so that there is a center very near to a place a person lives in the remotest corners of India. And what it does is that it ensures that any individual who does not have access to a computing device, a smartphone, or connectivity, or sheer ability to navigate a portal or download an app or go through, is able to get assisted access, goes to there. There is a service provider who for a very marginal fee offers him a service so that he is able to benefit from the online revolution. So that was the one important thing that was done way back, long back. Second important component is that, as we all know, India is a diverse country, 22 official languages and multiple other languages and dialects. So till we make services available in all Indian languages, we will not be able to get every Indian connected onto online services. And this is like, when we say that, we are talking about almost 500 million people who are not yet connected, 900 million people connected. But to get the last 500 million people, we'll need services in every language, and more importantly, voice-enabled services. So what we are working now, especially with the India AI mission and the projects like Bhashini, is that to ensure that we bring up the layer of voice over top of the DPI infrastructure, the India stack that we have built in. So that if any farmer wants to know about any agricultural practice, instead of going to an agriculture portal or downloading an app, he should be able to just speak to his phone or to call a toll-free number and give his query. Where do I get fertilizers? Where do I get pesticides? What crop to sow? When to harvest? Where to sell? What are the best price I can get? So all advisory services which will rely on a lot of APIs at the back end, language translation, and ChatGPT kind of AI, generative AI, which will generate the information based on the various data sets that's available, assimilate it, convert into a voice, and render it to him in his mother tongue. Similarly, for students, where to access information. So this is the transformational layer that we are working on currently, so that the layer of AI over DPI will further democratize access to public services to each citizen across. It has happened in financial services, already happening in agriculture, educational services, and we hope to take it far and beyond to ensure that every Indian is able to benefit from the DPI and the AI revolution that we are seeing.
That's really heartening to know, sir, especially the voice-enabled services. You know, recently when I talked to my grandparents, they have a lot of challenge because they say that now everything is so digital. People do not accept payments, so I need to understand how to operate these things. Imagine the world that you're talking about with respect to enabling a lot of these services using voice. It will not only reduce the digital divide, but also the aging population, which is hard to catch into these technologies, is definitely going to improve as well. So great point there. Venkat is taking this discussion further, and maybe you wear two hats. One is that eminently of industry leader, but also secondly as a citizen of India. So where do you see industry can play a strategic role rather than just being a tactical partner in when we are talking about deciding on a strategy for India's future so that we can enable tech for India's growth? What's the role that industry can play in this strategic manner, perhaps?
I think industry has a very, very significant role to play. Given the context of AI and with the type of diffusion that is happening on AI, we speak about ChatGPT so fluently now, but just about a year and a half back, when it was just announced, who would have thought a technology as advanced as AI is going to get used? The example that Abhishek Singh gave on a farmer, that was an example of a farmer in India using a technology of AI that was just developed 1 month back. Never before in the history has rate of diffusion of technology happened so much. And the reason it's happening is because this is not technology for the sake of technology. This is a general purpose technology which essentially has the potential to touch every fabric of our lives. And hence, the role of industry becomes significantly higher than just providing the technology. There are a lot of work that the industry needs to do in terms of really looking at, if you were to really say the economic prosperity of a country, right, and the growth, it is driven by 3 fundamental things. Number 1, an innovation ecosystem. Number 2, the educational institutions that propel it. Number 3, the availability of skilled talent. I think industry has a role to play across all the 3. Innovation is very well understood, but I think there is an additional role, and especially in the context of AI, the other 2 things become extremely important. If we were to really look at where we are headed from an AI perspective, the latest World Economic Forum report suggests that there is going to be close to about 95, 97 million new jobs that are going to get created globally. There are reports that say that, it's a PwC report which says that almost 15 trillion contribution is going to come from AI alone into the GDP. There are reports which say that that could easily get on to 100 trillion in a few decades from now. So look at the number. The numbers are staggering. Now, how do we get a rightful share of that number, given where India is headed, given where India wants to be? Quite frankly, based on all the data that is available, if we just continue our rate of growth, we'll become the 3rd largest economy by the end of the decade. But I don't think that is where we want to stop, right? We have a very, very good shot at becoming the number 2 economy globally, given all the demographics that are in our favor. So the role of the industry has to go well beyond just coming up with these cutting-edge innovation. There is an element of responsibility that the industry needs to take. Like in any new technology, there are going to be challenges in terms of how it gets adopted. In any technology we have seen, whether it was, when the steam engine was invented, and the first railway train actually made its debut in 1835, if I'm not wrong, it was actually happening between Liverpool and Manchester. And people actually were waiting at Liverpool for the train to arrive. They were on the track. Little did they know that the speed at which this locomotive comes, it can actually kill people. And by the way, accidents happen, including one of the senior government leader of Liverpool who was actually on the track celebrating it. That is because nobody estimated this beast to run at that speed. But did that stop the locomotive from moving ahead? No, on the contrary, it actually proliferated. And it led to one of the biggest economic benefit in terms of GDP growth across entire Europe, not just UK. So technology, when it comes in, it will have its set of challenges. It's very important for the industry to take a lead on something like AI because there are a lot of unknowns here than the knowns. And hence, an aspect towards a responsible AI is something that one needs to adopt. And that responsible AI should not stop just at you as a company. It needs to proliferate. It needs to be shared with government organizations, because at the end of the day, what will happen is technology can have a brake. An automobile was launched, there is a brake to stop the car. But if somebody does not apply the brake, the car will not stop. Why will somebody apply the brake? Because there is a signal which basically tells a person that by law, you're not supposed to cross the signal. Despite that, there are still people who overspeed, but an overwhelming population globally are law-abiding citizens. Hence, the role of the technology industry becomes very important to work with governments, to work with legislatures, to really look at what are some of the best practices that need to come in with respect to fairness, transparency, removing bias. So responsible AI becomes one of the most important tenets in which the industry can contribute. The other way in which the industry can contribute is by making sure that there is enough skilling available, because given where we are headed, almost 50% of the people in existing organizations need to be reskilled. The fact that AI has far-reaching implications where coding is no longer restricted to people who understand English. Anybody across the globe can code in their native languages given the advantage AI brings in. So new type of opportunities are going to get created. New data sets are going to get created. Abhishek Singh talks about digital MNREGA. Those are all the possibilities that exist, but skilling becomes a very important aspect in that. Again, our industry has to play a very, very important role in terms of how we are looking at skilling. For example, in Microsoft, we have a stated objective to skill 2 million people on AI in India alone by the end of this year. So every organization, if they start looking at this aspect and also looking at not just stopping at innovation, but connecting the dots between what we are trying to develop and where the demand exists in terms of employment, I think the economic prosperity of the organization and the country will go together. That's where I think the big role comes.
Thank you so much, and great examples, especially when you shared, Venkatesh, about the traffic, the road, and so on with respect to the technology adoption. It's interesting. I wish I knew a lot of law-abiding citizens on the road, but at least today I didn't see as many. But thinking about the citizen side of things, Sir Rohit, the question to you comes to mind is that one of the important parties in this strategic growth is the end consumer as well. And when consumers are faced with a new technology, they also face all kinds of disruptions, and there are challenges with respect to existing regulations and laws and so on, and which also leads to different kinds of problems that consumers come to forums like yours to get those addressed. So what do you see when a new technology comes in or is going to come in the future? How does consumer redress and will become and will change perhaps from a consumer's point of view?
I think the fundamental premise of Indian consumer law is consumer should not be taken for a ride unless you are an Uber and an Ola. But there are two principles. One is unfair trading practice. Nobody should indulge in unfair trading practice, and the consumer should get the value for what he or she is paying. Now, that's the principle, but let's talk about unfair trading practices. The misleading advertisements are a big component of that. And I attended a session where in Chennai with the Center for Responsible AI at IIT Madras, and the Google ads head Vidya was there. And they were talking of how AI would make a paradigm shift in the way advertising is being handled, not only on the creator side, but also on the recipient side. It's going to be targeted, it's going to intrude into your privacy, and it's going to be right in the face, whether you want it or not. So what the Indian law says is you have to have an express consent before you want to use my data or before you want to throw things at me which I didn't ask for. And then there are associated issues pertaining to privacy. The challenge here is regulation. Previous to this job, now I adjudicate, but I was a regulator. And it is very tempting to regulate these sectors. We love regulation. We bureaucrats, politicians, we want to regulate, we want to control. But the thing is, regulation in emerging technologies can be very tricky. There is a fine line that we have to draw between regulation and innovation. If you regulate too much, you stifle innovation. If you regulate too less, consumers tend to suffer. So this is a game which is constantly on. And since I handled e-commerce and I see Chetan sitting here, we face this. The e-commerce giants in India, we realized after a lot of due diligence, they indulge in what we call the dark patterns. These are manipulative practices which nudge the consumer in a direction which he or she is not intending to go. So this is unfair. But the thing was that both sides were not actually aware of the line that beyond this is unfair. So we sat with the industry. We realized that these 13 things you cannot do. Thankfully, the industry agreed, and that's how. So the point I'm trying to make is regulation cannot be very strict and tough. It has to be dynamic, and we have to sit together. Also, self-regulation. The industries like online gaming industry and even e-commerce, they have to self-regulate, just like the broadcasting sector. You can't force. First of all, it is difficult in terms of compliance. The second is the government does not have the wherewithal to go and check every place for compliance. So best is to self-regulate. So this almost like a carrot and stick. Unless you get caught, you can do whatever you want. But once you get caught, so that's the strategy. So the last point that I want to make about AI regulation is that no country can work on AI regulation in isolation. I have studied over the last 3 months, when I didn't have a job, of all kind of regulations, AI regulations that all the geographies are contemplating or they are working on. And it is a continuum from a very strict, the EU side, to the US side, which is very liberal. And since it transcends geographies, I think a system like the atomic energy, like a body like IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, we need a supervisory body like that to regulate AI, because if countries want to do it in isolation, it can never be implemented as it is intended to be. So regulation is tricky. It needs to be handled carefully. One more sentence, if you permit, about skills. We talk about AI skills and computer skills and coding skills, but I think what is most important in Indian education system requires a structural change. For the kids, we need to promote problem solving, creative thinking, and not just rote learning. Unless you do that, if I may use a bad phrase, we will still remain cyber coolies. We will be doing jobs for someone else who's smarter, who thinks like an entrepreneur, and whose thinking is more aligned to creativity. So let's change our education system to be more aligned to problem solving, creative thinking, and communication. When we were growing up, everybody wanted to be an engineer. All my 3 brothers are engineers. My father is an engineer. So we thought, ye art side wala to bekar hai, all these language. But now you see with prompt engineering, how important is how you engage with an LLM, the language skills. So these are new things, leadership skills. If you have to be an entrepreneur, you have to have leadership skills. Those things are not part of our curriculum. We can teach them programming, we can teach them IT skills, but unless we focus on this side, we will not be able to create a system which is nurturing innovators and entrepreneurs. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Sir Rohit. This is really interesting. And especially coming from Lordship Rohit, that regulation should not be strict is definitely a breather, and self-regulation is good, also great to know. The other point with respect to, and Harvey, maybe you could take this up, that from a consumer point of view, while consumer redressal regulations worry them, the other point is the privacy of them, of their data, and so on. So how do you think that this new technology is going to actually can reduce the barriers that they otherwise have with respect to their privacy and make sure that things are done in the right manner for the right consumer?
Yeah, this is an extremely challenging space, and with AI, it really exponentially increased and accelerated the privacy risks that we're all exposed to. And so when you think of privacy and kind of taking a step back, like how do we deal with these issues? And kind of the core concepts that we focus on is security and transparency and explainability as ways to address privacy risks. And so for security, for sure, you have to make sure that bad actors aren't going after the data and don't have access to it. So protecting it from harm or malicious intent and bad actors is critically important. But the privacy piece of it adds another layer of those that you allow to have the data. Are they acting responsibly with it? You mentioned the Indian law and the frameworks around express consent. That's important, but it's also not a really workable model. It puts a lot of pressure on the individual consumer to understand what's happening with their data. And so you'll see these lengthy privacy notices that list out everything that might be going on with your data that's incomprehensible to the average consumer. So kind of what's interesting, the way India's new law started putting this pressure on the companies more so than other regulations out there by calling the company a data fiduciary, right? And putting that duty of care and accountability onto the organization. So irrespective of whether the individual understands what's happening, as a company, we're responsible for safeguarding and honoring privacy rights and respecting that piece of it. But I think it's critically important to understand that the technology is moving fast. Trying to regulate too much may impede innovation, but also regulation is important to set the baseline and set a consistent standard of care. And we're talking about the public and private sector partnerships. Partnerships across the board are absolutely critical. Public sector within public sector, because we've seen friction points, and there's one hand consumers concerned about what companies are doing with their data, but they're also very concerned about what the government is doing with their data and balancing that government access to data for crime prevention, law enforcement, and other activities that the government needs to do to protect its citizen and protect its people, but also striking that balance against civil liberties. And so within government agencies themselves, there needs to be cooperation and alignment and checks and balances within how public sector is dealing with it and also private sector working through. And these collaborative meetings that we've been having, opening up the draft legislation and guidance for public comment is really important to see how companies can operationalize and implement the principles and the interests that the policy and the law is driving towards. And I'd say that next step that you were talking about too, international cooperation is absolutely critical. Because right, as you were mentioning, AI is not happening in a vacuum, and data being viewed as an asset. Data, in some countries, looking at data as the new currency, or looking at it from a perspective of a national resource or even a national security threat. So we do have to make sure there's international collaboration and cooperation in setting a baseline and consistent care when it comes to personal data or data across the board.
Thank you so much, Harvey. It's great to know of the things that are happening here. A lot is being talked actually about AI, but one reminder for us all should also be that there are other technologies beyond AI. And it's like saying that it's not that the tiger kills a lot of people, especially now the dengue time is here in NCR region. We know that mosquitoes are also very powerful. And obviously, Abhishek said the government is aware about this. They have this national quantum mission in addition to the India AI mission. They also have the India semiconductor mission. So definitely government is looking at multiple set of technologies, not just AI. The question to you is, are we thinking of integrating some of these technologies together to provide a more stronger and a holistic view for our customers, for our consumers as well? Or do we still think of them as silos that can actually address the market differently later on?
See, like most of these technologies that you mentioned, I would not like the analogy of tigers and mosquitoes. Like each of them, whether it's quantum or whether it's a blockchain or whether it's semiconductors, they all like strategic technologies. And they all have their own value and their own contribution that it can make to the economy, the contribution that it can help us in moving up the value chain. And we should realize that traditionally India has been regarded to be a country which is very strong when it comes to having technology skills. When it comes to, like, our companies have been building the IT systems of the global, of the most advanced countries of the world, whether they're banking systems, their transportation systems. Our companies have been up in front and competing with the best in the world. Our human capital, our engineers have been part of most of the tech companies, in fact, leading many of the big tech companies globally. So when it comes to that, we do have the technical skills, we do have the expertise, we do have an educational system, we do have a system of premier institutions like the IITs and Indian Institute of Sciences, the IISER, the IIITs, which is constantly churning out bright minds across. We do have a very vibrant startup ecosystem wherein we have people who are willing to invest, who are willing to take risks, who are willing to build businesses there. So when it comes to investing in quantum technologies, and when it comes to building semiconductors or fabs, we should be the natural choice globally. But again, many of these technologies require much more than just having technological skill sets. It requires heavy investment in research and development. It requires heavy investment in ensuring that we have what we call patient capital. Many of these sectors, especially semiconductors, quantum, will not result in returns within a short time frame. It requires investing for a long-term horizon. So that's what the government has taken a call, that given that the way electronics and the way semiconductors and the way technology will dominate our lives not only 40 years from now, but for many more years beyond, we do need to ensure that we do have a presence when it comes to the premier nations in the field of quantum technologies, in the field of semiconductors. That is why investments are being made. And semiconductors especially is a sector in which the whole world is making investments. We have committed $10 billion and we are promised much more. We already have had some investments coming in, some ATMP plants, some fabs being set up. But again, to move up from where we are now, from the fab that Tata is setting up is 28 nanometers. But to go from there to 3 nanometers or 5 nanometers, it requires much more than what we have done. So while we have covered a lot of ground, there's a lot more to do. And ultimately, these do get connected. Ultimately, semiconductors do power what artificial intelligence we are looking at. So once we are able to prove our mettle to the global community that yes, we are a reliable country in which technological skill sets are there and we have policy consistency with regard to promoting such technologies, we will see many more investments. We have seen how electronics manufacturers are coming in to begin to assemble devices, phones and all, but very soon the supply chain will move in here. The world is looking at a China plus strategy, so that way India will acquire a lot of strength when it comes to proving its mettle in these technologies, and then it will, the demographic advantage that we have of the trained capital, the students coming to fill in these jobs, and that would ultimately contribute to our goals of a Viksit Bharat, and that's how we will move up the ladder, whether we go in the third largest economy or the second largest economy. But as long as we are moving on the right track, we will be able to create value for all.
Thank you, sir. It's heartening to hear these terms, second largest economy and so on, and hope it happens. Venkatesh, perhaps this also requires some of the things that you had touched upon with respect to education, and Sir Rohit also mentioned about creating a workforce that is more focused on the new type of skills, whether it is related to creativity, problem solving, and he was alluding to leadership as well. So where do you see we can use technology itself to create the workforce that is going to be needed for this kind of a future, and where can perhaps industry also play a role in that?
Yeah, so just building on what Abhishek Singh sir said, I think we are fundamentally moving. I won't say moving. I think we're expanding from being known as the software capital of the world. Because if you really look at it, the type of code development that happens in India, purely from software as an industry, India is literally number one, right? And I can speak those figures from a Microsoft perspective. Our largest development center outside of US is actually in India. And what started off as something which was basically to just do maintenance work or coding work has now translated into core technologies around AI being actually developed out of India, serving the global market. That is the human capital that we have in the country. And with the type of investments that the government is making around semiconductor, around quantum, they're all associated technologies. Fundamentally, they are technology. And there is very, very good history. If you go back to history, I think technology always has played a very, very important role in the GDP growth of any country. So it's very, very heartening to see all the right things coming together. Our human capital, the type of opportunities that are expanding just beyond software, a very clear intention to be amongst the leader when it comes to AI, because these are game-changing things which can contribute, not just from a revenue monetization for the country, from an export potential, but fundamentally, upgrading our quality of life and also focusing more on what we are very, very good at doing. Because despite all these technologies coming, one thing that will continue to prevail is human ingenuity. And I'm so glad, Sir spoke about some of the things that we should bring down from an education. But apart from all the focus on technology, there is also about problem solving. I think basic research happens out of curiosity. Basic research, right? And the other most important thing when it comes to research is also the fact that it has to be open, it has to be shared. Papers have to be published, right? That's the only way research happens. Of course, you've got your IP things to make sure that all the efforts that you're putting in is adequately rewarded. But fundamentally, if we have to really begin to look at much larger things to do, we have to have far more patents coming out of India, far more work being done on research. And I think that is a very, very big opportunity that we have in front of us, given the fact that most of the large companies today, when it comes to their research organizations, a big portion is actually the Indian diaspora, right? If that opportunity presents itself in India, I think we are headed for a very, very great future ahead. So hence, the role when it comes to education skilling and the opportunities that industries can offer with respect to internships, with respect to being a part of a government and industry collaboration to go and work on some of these large research projects, given where quantum is headed, we actually have a potential to fundamentally discover new molecules at a time that is 1/10 of what it took before. We have an opportunity to go and find solutions to climate challenges, which is the world's biggest problem today, followed by water. And there are enough and more examples of how a very different thinking on that can actually help find a solve. Algae, as we typically treat algae as a waste product. Algae actually has the best capability to absorb carbon, right? There is work being done to find cure for incurable diseases of very high order of magnitude for people suffering from cancer blindness. All that requires deep collaboration and an ability to focus on research and trying to solve some of these problems. And it requires an infrastructure to be made available to these researchers and a conducive environment to do that. And that, I think, is an area where industry government can play a very, very important role. Given that that potential exists, it is the same potential that exists for us and for any other country. But if we were to leapfrog, given where we are headed, I think it's a great moment.
Thank you so much, Venkatesh. And the panel is definitely warmed up, providing lots of insights. If you have any questions, please do raise your hand. I see a few hands raised here, so whoever can bring the mic. There seem to be a lot of hands. We may take like 2 or 3 questions, perhaps, given the time now. That's where the person who sits in the front gets the chance to get a mic first. Okay.
I have a mic. Hi.
Hello.
Morning, sir. My name is Aditya. I'm from the Indian School of Public Policy. So, sir, there was a conversation on regulation and responsibilities that occurred. So this is in context of that. So NVIDIA's newest data center GPUs were announced to consume double the amount of energy that the previous generation did. So that would mean 1 million GPUs would consume 2 gigawatts of power. That is double the amount of the average nuclear power plant. So what are the conversations that big tech has when the sector is growing exponentially, where a big tech company might consume more energy than a small nation?
Perhaps either Harvey or Venkatesh could take.
A couple of more questions where we can address all together.
Okay, yeah, that's also a good idea. Maybe we can take 2 more questions and then address all of them. So that you have the mic, yeah.
Hello.
Oops.
So primarily, this is the very best session for me. I'm a research scholar, digital skills among students in higher education, especially in the small cities. So I'm from Kota, Rajasthan. I'm pursuing my PhD from Tata Institute of Social Sciences. So, sir, there is a question. When we talk the things are increasing, we are having the capable force with us, then we are talking about the Delhi, Mumbai, and the big cities, the Bangalore's one. Because in the small cities, there is no infra, no skills, no awareness. Because there are students who have completed their masters, primarily in management or law, and they haven't touched a computer. And the technology is there, mobile system is there, the internet is there, but it is not, they are not using it for the fruitful purpose or for the education purpose. It is going into the entertainment sector. And that is not going to help our country primarily. So how you will bridge this gap of the smaller cities and the big cities? Because when I'm sitting in Delhi and Mumbai, it's something different. And when I'm sitting in Kota or in the rural areas, it's entirely different. There is nothing like, means the digital revolution is going on except Instagram. So how you will
Sure.
reach this?
Got your question.
Yeah. Thank you. So, any other question? Yeah, we can take the mic here, please.
Hi, this is Rahul. I'm from Indian School of Public Policy. My question is that the growing use of DPIs and DPGs, we know that it is more accessible, the healthcare, but how can we make use of DPIs for affordability?
Okay, sure. So we have 3 questions. Maybe the first one, either Venkatesh or Harvey, you could answer, which was about big techs using a lot of energy. So do we address it, and how do we do that?
Yeah, there's certainly no answer to that yet, but I think the important part is that we're beginning to measure it, right? And so companies, and you saw the NVIDIA report, and all the companies that have publicly report their energy consumption, carbon footprint for the environmental and sustainability purposes. And so we're measuring that, and we're showing how much is being consumed by these AI systems and the compute power. And there is innovation happening now, right? Like Cisco and other companies are looking at how to produce more efficient chipsets, how to ensure that there is the right balance between the energy consumption and environmental footprint that this new technology is causing. So I think the first step is to measure it, and then we can look for innovative ways to reduce the carbon footprint.
Perfect.
I'll just add on to that. I think I agree with you that GPUs are energy guzzlers, right? But we are just at the starting point, right? To the point that my fellow colleagues said about optimization that will happen, but we also need to understand that the next generation of the chipsets that will have, while they may consume more power, but the performance that they will deliver will be significantly higher than the earlier generation. So hence, the net power actually is going down because that's one of the biggest problems we have to solve. It is not just about energy, it's also about the cost of the energy. But the most important thing in the overall context, and I think that's where the world is headed, is to really look at alternate sources of energy. If AI has to become general purpose, we need to harness the power of the sun. We need to harness the power of the wind. That's the only cost-effective way of doing it. And that will all be driven on clean energy. So most of the large organizations like ours, for example, we are saying that in a year from now, our entire energy needs is going to be fully met through renewable energies. We will stop using fossil fuel. That's the only way you can actually commit to doing something, and hence the work that's happening even on climate change is all getting together into it. So you're right that at this point in time, it is a problem that is waiting to be solved. But the good news is that there is a solution which is almost on the horizon, waiting to happen.
Great to know of the encouraging thoughts. Abhishek sir, would you like to take the second question on the difference between big cities and the small cities?
Yeah, in fact, very valid point, but I would like to mention that even though it may appear that most of the focus is there on the big cities, but if you look at the data with regard to where most of our technology professionals are coming from, it's the tier 2, tier 3 cities. If you look at the intake of our premier institutions like the IITs, the majority of the students are not from Delhi and Bombay. The majority of the students do come from the Bhilais and the Ranchis and the Bokaros and Gunturs and other cities. And Kota, you are yourself from Kota, and Kota has been like one of the prime contributors of our higher education ecosystem. And even those students who come to Kota to learn, they're not coming from Delhi and Bombay, they're coming from all over. In fact, some people from Delhi and Bombay aspire to go to Kota to be able to get a seat into the IITs. So having said that, the government also, like when we are conceptualizing the India AI mission, we realize this, and we know that the talent lies in the hinterland, talent lies in smaller cities. So under the India AI mission, also under the Future Skills program, there is a component of setting up data labs in 200 ITIs and polytechnics in tier 2, tier 3 cities. So therein, the ITIs, polytechnics, instead of training people to become mechanics and fitters, the idea is to equip them with IT infrastructure and to ensure that they're able to train people to become data scientists, data annotators, data analysts, and they take up the jobs that will come out in the AI era. So the focus is there on tier 2, tier 3 cities. So it's the events like PAFI can happen in Delhi and Bombay, but the real talent of our IT workforce does come from the tier 2, 3 cities, and it's because of the ecosystem that we have developed over a period of time.
Thank you so much, sir. Yeah, you want to add?
I'll just supplement on the entertainment part. You said very condescendingly that they are just using it for entertainment, these systems. Only yesterday, our cabinet decided to set up a center for excellence for It's a very tough acronym, AVGCXR. So, entertainment is not secondary. It's a good generator of employment, even in the tech sector. So don't be partial towards entertainment. Thank you.
Thank you. And would anyone like to take that final question? I actually couldn't get that question, what it was.
What was the question?
Yeah, I couldn't understand. It was about...
Oh, this.
Yeah.
How DPIs and DPGs would be useful in health sector for more affordability? Because we understand that it is more about accessibility, that we can have more accessibility using the DPIs. But how can we ensure that healthcare would be more affordable using these technologies?
See, one very simple use case, which is already in practice and already under implementation, is the eSanjeevani. eSanjeevani is one of the part of the India Stack offering, which is a telemedicine solution through which people can access healthcare. And earlier, and it's a post-COVID thing. 2020, this eSanjeevani solution was there, but it was only there to connect doctors with specialists. So doctors in smaller cities could contact specialists for hospitals where specialists were not there. But when 2020 February, COVID came and there were lockdown, shutdown, and people were not able to go to hospitals and all, that eSanjeevani system was upgraded. And from a capacity of 5,000 consultations per month, today it is doing 500,000 consultations per day. So the ecosystem has expanded massively, and it was opened up for not only doctor-doctor, but patient-doctor consultations. So that way, and it's a zero cost, so affordability of healthcare has come down. Under the Ayushman Bharat Health Mission, this whole tech stack that has been set up with Abha IDs and all is revolutionizing the way you have your electronic health records stored in your health locker, the way you don't need to do repeated tests, the way the data analytics can help you advise with regard to what to do, what not to do. Its integration with the insurance ecosystem will ensure affordable healthcare insurance to everyone. The Ayushman Bharat Jan Arogya Yojana, under which every family is given an insurance of 5 lakh rupees, is again built on the same tech platform. So building a tech platform ensures that proper health monitoring helps in preventive healthcare, helps in access to insurance and health services through telemedicine and all, and that way the overall health access of health costs does come down.
Supplement, I'm a former health secretary of Rajasthan. We have districts like Jaisalmer where distance is a big issue. So for checking the hemoglobin levels of pregnant and lactating mothers, if you take a blood sample and it will take about 72 hours. So we had a system where you could take a picture, our worker could take a picture of the conjunctiva, and with the local database match, it could give with 90% the level of hemoglobin. It will not tell you it is 10.3, but it will say it's between 10 and 11. So the innocuous kind of interventions that are required, like giving folic acid or whatever, we can start right there without waiting for that, and our ASHA workers were using that. So things like that will revolutionize not just the proliferation, but also bring the cost down, as Abhishek ji was saying.
Thank you so much, sir. The list of questions may never end given the kind of panel that we have and the interest in this, but we are limited by time. So let me just summarize what we've heard so far. And we started with painting a very rosy picture of what India can be using tech 40 years from now. But it seems that that picture is not just a dream. There's a lot of reality already happening with the kind of examples that we got here. We also got to know that there are things that are happening with respect to reducing the access to just computers through voice and reducing the digital need for people, then reducing the digital divide. We are getting into this understanding that regulation is not going to actually stifle innovation. Coming from regulators is actually a good thing to know. We are getting to see the kind of skills that we are already providing to our workforce. And with these kind of things, with this strategic direction that we have, with the kind of community that we have in India, which has the hunger, which has the passion, definitely the picture is not just only a dream, but it's going to be a reality, and it's going to be a very rosy picture. So with that thought in our minds, let's just close this session, and I'm going to request Vedika to do the concluding remarks.
Thank you, Nitendra. A very interesting session. New technologies will definitely play an important role in India's growth and global aspirations. Simplifying regulations and expediting commercialization will definitely be the key. With this, I would like to thank our special guest, Abhishek Singh ji, Rohit Kumar sir, our panel, Harvey, Venkatesh, Nitendra and Deep. Thank you so much.